Today's a very special day, and I wanted to focus on the day, a little bit of the history, and always when we look at things that happen, we want to look with an eye of how does this affect me? What lesson can I take from this? How is this applicable in my life? So this goes back to the fall of 1977, to Shmini Atzeres, which means the very end of the whole cycle of the holidays that we call the Jewish month of Tishrei. We have Rosh Hashanah, then we have Yom Kippur, then we have Sukkot. At the very end of Sukkot, after 7 days of that holiday, it flows into another 2-day holiday of Simchat Torah, where we have this very joyous dancing for basically 48 hours. Highlighted the 2 nights by ceremonious dancing with the Torah scrolls, but really we're supposed to be dancing for 48 hours. So in 1977, going back a bit in time, in Brooklyn, in 770, in Lubavitch World Headquarters, it was an unusually, for those days, a large crowd that had come to spend the holidays with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Meaning every year more came. This year, 1977, was the largest crowd they had ever seen. Many people from Israel, from France, from around the world had come to spend the holiday with the Rebbe. And throughout the month, the Rebbe is encouraging the singing, and it's very lively, very uplifting. And now it comes the last day of the holiday of Sukkot, which of course we know has a special name, Hoshana Rabbah. And there's very long prayers, and the Rebbe is encouraging the singing during the prayers very vigorously. And then when the Rebbe leaves, the Rebbe goes to his sukkah. There's of course still Sukkot. It's the last day of Sukkot. And he distributes honey cake to anyone that had not yet gotten honey cake from him the entire month, because of course honey cake symbolizes a good, sweet year. That's their tradition. So he would give the cake and a blessing to Jew after Jew after Jew. This is just supposed to be the last few people that hadn't yet gotten, but it took hours. And then just when the Rebbe thought, so to speak, he was done, more people came and more people came. And in the end, the Rebbe left 770 and got to his home a very few minutes before the holiday and basically had to turn around and go right back. And the Rebbitzin, the Rebbe's wife, had sent a message to the secretariat. Maybe if they could make the dancing time a little shorter. The Rebbe seemed very, very, very drained. Though, of course, to the public eye, the Rebbe wasn't drained at all. And the Rebbe was full of energy and giving blessings and just this flowing, ceaselessly flowing fountain of energy and blessing and positivity and strength. But the Rebbe said the Rebbe was very tired. So that night they have the dancing. And there's 7 dances with the Torah on the first night, and of course 7 again on the second night. And the tradition in Chabad is that the first and 7th dance, the Rebbe dances. So the Rebbe goes to the central platform where the Torah scrolls are and dances the first dance, and then goes back and encourages the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and he goes back and dances the 7th dance. So the Rebbe goes and he dances the first dance, and he's so energetic. There's so much energy, there's so much joy. It's unprecedented, the energy and the joy, and 770 is crowded like never before, thousands and thousands of people, and they're all like flying. It's like amazing. And then the Rebbe goes back to his place, and the second hakafa, the second set of dancing, and the Rebbe's encouraging it, and the third, and the Rebbe's encouraging it. And then suddenly, in the middle of the 4th, the Rebbe just slumped forward on his stender, on the prayer stand, and he asked his secretary to bring him a chair, which was unheard of. The Rebbe never sat. There was standing and encouraging. He's the general. And his secretary brought a chair, and the Rebbe just sort of fell into it. And everyone in 770 was like, what is going on? And they understood very quickly that it must be a heart attack. Because there's nothing that the Rebbe would suddenly sit down in the middle of the dancing. And quickly it was chaos, and everyone has different opinions of what to do. And in essence, thousands and thousands of people in minutes are outside. And of course, whatever doctor on the spot ran over to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's like, get a drink of water, drink. We don't drink outside the sukkah. Sukkah is still, it's Shmini Atzeres, but Shmini Atzeres, so it's not in sukkahs. We still are careful to keep the laws of only eating and drinking in a sukkah. Shmini Atzeres, you can't drink outside the sukkah. No, of course not. Okay, so let's go right now. Well, we're in the middle of hakavos. The Rebbe's like, we got to finish hakavos. So very quickly they finished the 4th, did the 5th, did the 6th, now it's the 7th. The 7th is the one the Rebbe is supposed to go and dance, but they're like, okay, well, maybe just dance right here. There said, of course not. The Rebbe went, walked. This was considering the magnitude of the heart attack he was experiencing, like superhuman. Walked to the place of the Torah scrolls, danced, walked back. They said the final prayer of Aleinu, and the Rebbe left, went into the sukkah, and they brought grape juice. The Rebbe said, no, we don't make Kiddush on grape juice. Where's the wine? And the Rebbe was saying, we we're not drinking water, or for that matter, orange juice. They want to give the Rebbe orange juice, which is something they say is very good to have with a heart attack. Outside the sukkah, we're having wine, not grape juice. And after that, we'll have the doctors examine me. And everything is really fine, and everything's really fine. In the interim, they had called 4 top cardiologists from the New York area who came, and they all said the Rebbe just had a massive heart attack, and they was going to have an even larger one. This was sort of the precursor of another one. They brought a cardiogram machine to hook the Rebbe's heart up to monitors, and they said the Rebbe has to be brought to the hospital, like right now, no question. And the Rebbe refused. The Rebbe said, no, he's staying in 770. And they said, well, if you don't go to the hospital, we're not taking responsibility for this. And all 4 doctors left. And the story continues. There's many details that all show like the Rebbe's, basically this vision the Rebbe had, that the best thing for him was to stay in 770 and then make 770 the hospital, which is exactly what happened. They really didn't know what to do, because the doctors, and in the middle of the night, the Rebbe had another, as the cardiologist had said, a far larger heart attack, such a heart attack that surviving it was a big kindness of God. The idea of complete recovery, like nobody was even thinking of at that time. No cardiologist would have thought of it, but there was actually no cardiologist around because they'd all left. And the doctors that were there, just regular local doctors, were like, we have to take the Rebbe to the hospital. And the Rebbe said no. And they didn't know what to do. And they turned to the Rebbetzin, to the Rebbe's wife. Can you give us permission? We got to take the Rebbe to the hospital. And she said, my husband, for all the years I've known him, has been always in complete control of himself. If he's saying he does not want to go to the hospital, he cannot go to the hospital. He stayed. They made 770 a hospital. They found a cardiologist. Many things happened that led ultimately to the Rebbe's complete recovery. To get full recovery back of your heart would have been just not even thought of. The Rebbe had full recovery of his heart and of his entire body, and continued with tremendous vigor after this whole very intense episode in 1977. I wanted to focus on like a few ideas. Going back into the story, if you remember the first night, this was Shmini Atzeres, and then there's the next day of the holiday, and of course all the Hasidim are up the whole night, and they're worrying, and they're saying psalms, and the Rebbe said to dance, so they're dancing, and it was hard for them to dance because they were concerned, and the Rebbe said no, dance, and dance with more energy. And the next night, there's even bigger hakafos dancing in the synagogue, and the Rebbe said dance with more energy, and they danced with more energy, and that whole night they danced and they sang, and they actually went out to the streets singing and dancing, and the Rebbe is healthy, the Rebbe will be healthy, the Rebbe is healthy. They were putting those words to Hasidic melodies, and they're dancing, literally marching on the streets and singing and dancing the entire night. Of course, the Rebbe's room is right there, and it was very noisy. And they said to the Rebbe, like, should we tell us to be quiet? The Rebbe said, no, this is pleasant music for me. This is pleasant music. I guess it's very therapeutic music, so to speak. And the same continued the next day, with the Hasidim understanding that this is what the Rebbe needed. This is what they needed to add in joy, and adding in joy, adding in dancing, adding in singing. That was to create this salvation. Now it's after the holiday. Traditionally, after the holiday, the Rebbe will be in the middle of a Hasidic Farbrengen that will continue for hours, and then the Rebbe will distribute wine of blessing. So the Rebbe sent down wine of blessing to be distributed. And the Hasidim were told there's going to be another surprise. Like, wait around, there'll be something else that's going to happen. And the something else was that around midnight, there was a hookup from the Rebbe's office to the central synagogue. And the Rebbe spoke to the Hasidim. The doctor gave permission to speak for 5 minutes. He spoke for 22 minutes. And he said to the Hasidim as they were listening, geographically, we're not in the same room, we're far. Hasidim are downstairs in 770, the Rebbe's up in his room. But through this hookup, through this technology, we're one. In other words, you're hearing my voice, I'm talking, and we're connecting. And the message the Rebbe was giving was this message of unity, that unity is not contingent on geographic proximity, that there could be a physical separation, but we can still be united, we can still be one. And I thought that idea could have a lot of just ramifications in our own lives, in our own reality, of times when we're not physically close to people, but we feel their presence, we feel one with them, we feel connected. There's obviously so many stories of people that maybe in a very close relationship or a very close friendship, that suddenly you know or feel what another person is going through. Because even though you're not physically together, even though you're not seeing the other person, you're close, you're one. So geographically, you're in one country, she's in the other, you're in one state, she's in the other. You know what's happening to them. You sense it, you feel it, because you're one. And that oneness is not contingent on physical proximity. So I thought that idea, that oneness is not contingent on physical proximity, and sometimes we can be very close, even though geographically we're very far. I thought that's just an idea that's really relevant for a lot of us in a lot of different situations. So the holiday's over. I'm, of course, skipping tremendous parts of the story. And the Rebbe's in 770 turned hospital. He has 24-hour care of cardiologists. First, he had the cardiologist from Chicago, actually, Dr. Ira Weiss. Then when he had to return to his practice, he had a cardiologist from Manhattan, Dr. Larry Resnick, who was with him the entire time. Dr. Resnick was actually at that time serving in the Army, and he was an Army doctor, a cardiologist in Hawaii. And they managed to get him from Hawaii to come to Brooklyn, not taking a leave of absence, because they wouldn't give him a leave of absence from his Army duty. So instead, this was part of his Army duty, was taking care of the Rebbe. And he was there until the Rebbe left 770, literally. The Rebbe had it far better than in a hospital. He had a cardiologist on hand 24/7. He had the best top equipment. The most cutting edge equipment for 1977 was in his office, was in 770 turned hospital. And he had the support, the emotional support, the spiritual support of being with all of his followers, of being with all the Hasidim, which I think, the Rebbe said, no, he's staying in 770. And people be like, oh, that's crazy. It doesn't make sense. And actually, it made a lot of sense. And actually, it was the best thing. If you can turn where you are into the top hospital, it's actually the best. But what were the Hasidim doing? The Rebbe's with the doctor recovering, and people all over the world, I say Hasidim, all Jews from all over the world, were doing whatever they could to create healing for the Rebbe. What does that mean? What were they doing? Some were adding in prayers, in psalms, in good deeds, in extra Torah study, in extra going out on the streets to get other Jews to do commandments, to do mitzvahs, to put on tefillin, to light Shabbos candles. Jews all over the world were strengthening themselves and getting other Jews all over the world to strengthen themselves to create healing and salvation for the Rebbe. Because from the doctor's perspective, it would be miraculous for the Rebbe to have a complete recovery after what he went through. And I think that point, of course we know it, but it's always good to remember that point. To me, that point is we have a lot of power. We are not helpless. We are not just all, who knows what's going to be. And no, we have power to create miracles. We have power to create salvation. And it's always important to remember that we have the power. Like a lot of times we feel like we're the victim, or we're just, things are happening to us. We have power. We have a lot of power. And when we use our spiritual power, then miracles happen. Meaning God is scripting this, right? So God scripted these enormous heart attacks. God scripted the tremendous care the Rebbe was going to get. God scripted that, yes, the Rebbe had a complete supernatural recovery. Made no sense on any medical level for someone of the Rebbe's age suffering from such enormous heart attacks to be completely back to better. Unbelievable, made absolutely no sense. Okay, but God is God. That's true. But we're his partner. And when we contribute to the process, that's very powerful. When we remember that we're the partners and we can make things happen, we make things happen by prayer, we make things happen by psalms, and we make things happen by charity, we make things happen by extra Torah study, we make things happen by doing extra commandments, we're really powerful. And we partner with God to make miracles. I don't know, I'm sure probably all of us at some point has experienced this, of just taking the initiative and pushing spiritually and seeing miracles. And it's always good to remember that. We have the power, and when we're in a situation, we never have to resign ourselves to the situation. We can accept whatever's happening as the will of God and for our good, and we trust God that it will be good that we understand as good, but we never have to resign ourselves to a situation. We can really take initiative and make miracles. Make miracles. I can definitely say I've been the recipient of many miracles over my life. And hopefully I was part of the process of making those miracles by giving God more and giving God more and giving God more and letting those miracles unfold. It's now about 5 weeks after the Rebbe's heart attack. For 5 weeks, this was two huge, huge heart attacks that definitely another person could have not survived just the heart attack and not even having a chance at recovery. It's 5 weeks later. The Rebbe's recovery is supernatural to the complete, almost like shock of the doctors. Again, considering the Rebbe's age, considering the severity of the heart attacks, considering just, the normal factors of how normal recovery takes, how a heart normally recovers from that damage. It was just supernatural to the doctors, the recovery. And of course, to the followers of the Rebbe, it was amazing, and they were so ecstatic. But the Rebbe is still in 770, meaning even though the recovery is amazing, 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 but it's not amazing enough that the doctors feel, okay, we can say you don't need 24-hour medical care. It's amazing, unbelievable, but we still want you to have 24-hour medical care. And then something happened. What happened? Let me give you a little backstory to understand what happened. Even before, or during, or the very beginning of World War II, even before World War II, I think, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was in Poland, and he sent 10 cartons of holy books and manuscripts to New York. Maybe this was the very beginning of World War II. He was still able to send them, but again, he already understood he was leaving Poland and going to America. So I don't remember exactly on the date line if it was right before the war or the very beginning of the war. Sometime in the war, he was actually able to send them. And the war started with, September 39, so maybe a little before this point. 9 of those cartons arrived in New York, and 1 did not. Got lost. Unfortunately, we call these things unfortunate. Of course, God runs the world, but unfortunately, that 1 crate that did not arrive held the most precious manuscripts. Meaning it wasn't just like nice books from his library. It was literally handwritten manuscripts that were very precious, that were very holy, they were very sacred, and they were lost. So this is happening about 1939. Remember, now it's 1977. So what happened was booksellers, rare booksellers, were coming and selling items that the Lobsters realized was actually part of this box of manuscripts. So the box of manuscripts is somewhere if people are able to sell them. Anyway, the box of manuscripts was being held by the Polish government. To make a long story short, and Lubavitch was negotiating with the Polish government to get back what they rightfully own, their box of manuscripts. And at this point in 77, this is towards the end of 77, this is about this time of year, about November, the government said, well, if you publicly thank the Polish government, we will lend you these manuscripts for 90 years. Great, we'll thank you, no problem. And Lubavitch put 3 full-page ads in 3 prestigious newspapers thanking the Polish government for lending them for this period of 90 years their own manuscripts. And the Polish government sent the box back to New York, to 770. So the box arrived the very end of the month of Cheshvan. The box arrived, the box was brought to the library. So nowadays there's actually like an inner bridge between the building of 770 and the building of the library. In those days there wasn't. So the Rebbe actually left 770 and went into the library to touch, to see, to be with these manuscripts. I don't know which day of the week it was. I don't know if it was on a Wednesday, on a Tuesday, but the very, very end of the month. And Thursday night, when I read it was the next month, it was Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Today's Rosh Chodesh Kislev. That's why we're talking about this today. The doctor said the Rebbe is strong enough. The Rebbe does not need 24-hour medical care. The Rebbe still needs a lot of frequent examinations. The Rebbe does not no longer needs to be in the hospital that 7070 became. The Rebbe can go home. And that's what happened. That was on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, Thursday night, the Rebbe went home. Enormous celebration and singing and drinking and dancing, going out on the streets and getting Jews to do many, many mitzvahs in honor of this. But I want to just focus on this point because I think it's so special that what event seemingly was a precursor to the Rebbe being able to leave the hospital of 770 was being with those Torah manuscripts, being with Torah. Torah is the Rebbe's life. The Rebbe was with these precious, holy, sacred manuscripts, and maybe the next day, maybe it took 2 days, the doctor said, yeah, he doesn't need to be in the hospital anymore. The Rebbe can go home. And that point is really strong. It's, of course, strong in terms of understanding what a Rebbe is and how the Rebbe's life is so obviously Torah. But I think it relates to all of us. I think it relates to all of us that Torah is life. We have verses that say that. We have songs that say that. We have prayers that say that. Torah is the life of a Jew. Torah is our life. You know, in the times of the Roman persecution, this was after the destruction of the Second Temple, and the Romans made many laws forbidding the study of Torah. And the Jews continued to study Torah. One of the leaders of the Jews then was Rabbi Akiva. You've heard of him, very famous leader of the Jews, and one of the greatest Torah scholars of all times. And he continued to learn and teach Torah. And he was asked, aren't you scared? I mean, the Romans are going to kill you. And he responded with a parable, a fish that, I don't remember the whole details of the story, but the fox is on the land and says to the fish, you know, what's really dangerous in the water, I see you're little fish. There's big fish that can eat you up. Maybe you should come to dry land, and then you'll be safe from all those big predator fish in the waters. The fish said, if we leave the water, we're surely going to die. If I don't die, I might die teaching Torah. And Rabbi Akiva did die, and he was burnt at the stake by the Romans for teaching Torah. That's a possibility. But if I don't have Torah, for sure we're all dead. For sure there's no existence, not to me personally and not to the Jewish people, if we're not in the living waters of Torah. And sometimes you can even feel it. Sometimes you can feel that you're just weak or drained or blah, and you learn and you're rejuvenated and you have life and you feel energized. And sometimes you learn Torah and you don't see how it's giving you life, but it is. It's the quotient of life. It's actually, when we speak of the resurrection of the dead, how will the dead will be resurrected? Well, there's a special dew that God has reserved to resurrect the dead. And what is that dew? That dew is the inner dimension of Torah. Torah gives life. Anyone here has ever felt that? No, I wouldn't be confident for sure that everyone has, but I wouldn't be surprised if people have. Anyone here has felt that, has had that experience when they learned Torah and they felt that life? Torah gives life.
I do.
You feel it, Chava? You get that life
Yes,
from Torah?
I feel it. I noticed it, that like now I even like feel a need. Like if if I need some emotional strength or anything, right? Or just like whatever, I go to Torah. Like I feel like I need it. I go, I find a lecture, I listen to lecture, and after that I always feel filled with something, with energy, with positive thoughts, with positive outlook. So it's like for me right now, I feel strong need for that.
Wow. That's really special because I said before, I was asking people about partnering in miracles and creating miracles, and I'm sure that we all have had that experience, if you remember or not. Like I know that. But not everyone has that sensitivity to see and feel and experience how Torah gives life. But it does give life to all of us. I think just some people are more sensitive, or maybe in certain situations, our sensitivities get heightened and we really feel that Torah feeds us. We're actually told Torah is the only food our soul ever has. Meaning, as Jews, we're commanded to serve God. And serving God means we do the commandments, of which one is Torah. Torah is a commandment. And there's 612 other biblical commandments and thousands of rabbinic commandments. And none of them feed our soul. They're all important. We all need to do them. They change the world. They bring redemption. They create garments with which our soul will experience the heavenly bliss in the afterlife. Meaning they help us, and they help world, and they help God. But they don't feed our soul. The only food our soul ever gets is Torah. Torah is literally the food of the soul. So I don't know if we're all so sensitive to feel it. I'm so touched and awed that Chava can see it so directly, but it's actually true for all of us. It's literally the only food we ever really have, because the only thing that feeds our soul, and that's our core. So it's interesting. I remember a student of mine was telling me, now of course she's a student, which means she's in school, which means it's a Jewish school. She's learning Torah all the time. So she doesn't necessarily feel how Torah feeds her because she's always well fed. But she said in the summer, when she wasn't learning, she actually felt it. She felt like this weakness. She didn't have her normal diet of lots and lots and lots of plentiful food for her soul. She felt so weak. And she learned and she felt that strength. She felt that food. She felt it giving her power, strength, energy. So sometimes we could be on a regular basis imbibing Torah and feeling how it's feeding us. And sometimes we're in a more of a crisis situation and we feel so needy and we feel how Torah feeds us. And sometimes we have a break from Torah and we're not learning Torah, and then we get some Torah and we feel how it's feeding us. But if we feel it or not, this is the food. The Torah is the food of our soul. So I felt this very strongly when we see this with the Rebbe. He's getting better, he's getting better, he's getting better, but the doctors still feel he needs 24/7 medical care. And then he gets this huge injection of this most precious Torah, having these manuscripts that have been lost, so to speak, since World War II. This is now 1977, talking about almost 40 years later. And wow, with that food, the Rebbe had the strength to leave the hospital of 770, to go back home. So I'd love it if we could all take some of these ideas, take this idea that we always can be united, always can feel one with someone, physically with them or very far from them. Take this idea that we don't have to be passive, we don't have to be resigned, we can be proactive players and create the miracles that we need and that the world needs and that other Jews need. And take this idea of Torah as life. Torah gives life, Torah is our food, Torah is our substance, Torah is our energy. Torah is what we need, and God gave it to us. The sages say Torah is the potion of life. It's the potion of life. And it's so accessible. It's as accessible as a YouTube lecture or any of my talks on my playlists, or any books that you have in your house of Torah. It's so accessible in English, in Russian. It's so many languages. It's so accessible, and it's giving us life. Torah gives life, and Torah affects us in very strong ways. I'm remembering now, Chava just spoke, I'm remembering the story Chava shared a few months ago with her son-in-law, reading the book she got him on Torah, and then on his own suddenly deciding he wanted to go to the synagogue. Torah gives physical life, and Torah gives spiritual life. Torah gives life. And if you don't feel it, like many things we say, you just haven't taken enough. Take some more. The Hasidic saying is, there's three things that affect a person. If you don't think they're affect, they haven't taken enough. Mashka, vodka makes you drunk, and if you're not drunk, you just didn't have enough. Money makes you crazy, and if you're not crazy, you just don't have enough. And Hasidus makes you godly, and if you're not godly, you just don't have enough. And Torah gives life. I'm adding that one. That's not part of the three. If you don't feel you get the life, maybe we don't have enough. Take more, and feel that Torah is the source of our life. And then, again, going back to our story, it's Rosh Chodesh Kislev, 1977, about, I don't know what the English date was, but about this time of year, end of November, beginning of December, whatever it was, of 1977, the Rebbe went home. The Hasidim, this was Thursday night, celebrated the entire night, celebrated Friday, and went out and brought the good news to Jews on the streets of New York to do more mitzvahs, to thank God for this amazing recovery, and continue celebrating through Shabbos and beyond. And annually, every year since, we celebrate and we thank God. We know history is not just past. What's in the calendar is really affecting the energy of the current time. Passover isn't just an exodus that happened 3,300 some years ago, nor do we only get the Torah 3,300 years ago. Passover, when it happens, we're in an exodus, and Shavuos, when it happens, we're getting the Torah. And now at this point, the Rebbe has health, and we celebrate the Rebbe's health, and we thank God for the Rebbe's health, and we thank God for the miracles he does for all of us. We're just entering Kislev, right? It's a Jewish month of Kislev. Kislev is called the month of redemption. There's so many Hasidic, for sure, holidays of redemption throughout the month. So many holidays, so many special events. And then we culminate in Hanukkah. The end of Kislev is the holiday of Hanukkah, which is a very unusual holiday, because holidays are not usually in the second half of the month. and this is literally like the last week of the month of Kislev, is Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is the story of martyrs, self-sacrifice, and miracles. So this is definitely the energy of the month, redemption and miracles. And we should all be able to thank God, the miracles unfolding in Israel and the miracles that we'll see in our own lives. I actually just heard this week, I'm sharing this because I never heard this before, so I'm assuming maybe nobody else here ever did. I think it was pretty top secret news that I was told, I heard, maybe it's no longer top secret, obviously, if it's out. My husband went in for the conference of the emissaries of the Rebbe, and this news reporter spoke at the conference, then he did a workshop, and he shared some of these secrets. If you remember, the first hostage the IDF, Israel, rescued was a female soldier. Her name begins with an M, her last name Megiddo or something like that, but I'm bad with names. The first
Right, I
hostage.
remember.
You remember.
Yeah,
So they never said how they got her out. All the time, the later rescue operations, they showed us videos, they told us. This one, they never said how they got her out. So I just heard this Saturday night for the first time. Do you know how they were able to rescue her? She was being held hostage, and she sees that her captor fell asleep. And she somehow had the presence of mind, the courage, the guts, the audacity, the bravery. I don't know what you would have done then. I don't see myself. I should never be in such a situation. Would have realized to do this. She took his phone, which either was unlocked or she'd been watching and knew how to get in, and she sent a text to her mother. What do you think she sent to her mother in that text? She pinned her location. So her mother got this text from some unknown Arab phone number, phone number of some terrorist in Gaza with her daughter's location pinned. And with that information, the IDF went in and they were able to rescue her. When did she do this? When did this terrorist fall asleep when he's guarding her with his phone out there? Within 12 hours after her mother had a very emotional, strong challah separation ceremony. If you remember, the videos were going around of her mother separating that challah. Within about 12 hours of her friend, a fellow female soldier, buying for her a letter in the Sefer Torah, the Rebbe created the concept of writing Torah scrolls where every Jew buys one letter. And the entire scroll is made up of these letters, 300,000 some Jewish people, a letter of protection. Within hours of her uncle, completely not religious, keeping Shabbos. He committed to keep one Shabbos in her honor. Her mother separating the challah, her friend buying the letter in the Sefer Torah, her uncle keeping Shabbos, and this terrorist falls asleep, and she has the courage and the strength and the presence of mind to grab his phone and send her mother her location. And with that, they rescued her. I was so blown when I heard this. Blown because I don't think I would, like in a million years, to have the bravery to grab that phone and the presence of mind to send your location, and God making it that he fell asleep and she was able to do this, and just seeing so clearly, as I was saying, we create the miracles. We partner. God runs the show and we're his partners. We partner and create miracles. Something else this reporter shared that I didn't know, it just was very emotional to me. Not as much privy to the inner secrets, but in a sense, you remember when they rescued the 4 hostages, the 1 woman and the 3 men, from 2 separate locations. The woman was being held herself, and about 200 meters away, these 3 men were being held. And the IDF, they somehow they know, by now they say where everyone is. They just can't get to them because the Hamas have orders, if anyone comes, the first thing you do is kill the hostages. But they knew all this, and they had the operation ready, and they were going to do this very daring operation. And then the IDF, or the secret, they call it the Shin Bet, the Secret Service, found out that the plans had changed, because where the woman was being held, there were 3 terrorists guarding her. And at the last minute, like right when the operation was supposed to go out, for some reason, they added a 4th terrorist. So now there are 4 terrorists guarding her instead of 3. And that logistically just threw off the whole planning of the operation. And they were like, okay, forget it. We can't rescue her. We our whole strategy was built on 3. Now there's 4. We don't have a strategy for that. We can't do it. Forget it. We'll go for the men. We'll get the 3 men out, and we won't be able to rescue her. And they didn't know what to do, because obviously if they rescued the 3 men, for sure they would never have an opportunity to rescue her. Now, her mother was critically ill. Her mother since has passed away. Her mother was critically ill. And they'd been praying, her father had been praying, his daughter should be released in time that his wife could see her before she passes away. And for some reason that makes no sense, from a military standpoint, they said, okay, forget it. We're just going to do the operation anyway. Like, we're going to forget we know there's a 4th guy, so to speak. We're just going to go for it. They just gave it the green light, and they went and they got her out and they got the men out. And actually, practically, they said it was far easier rescuing her than it was rescuing the 3 men. She was actually easy. They got down the 4 terrorists very easily. And the 3 men, they said very, very, very difficult. And straight from her being rescued, they took her straight to where her mother was, that she was able to see her mother before her mother passed away. It was just very emotional to me, envisioning this, IDF were soldiers, but we're Jews. So in the end of the day, we have a Jewish heart. And even if militarily it makes no sense, that Jewish heart is saying, this mother needs to see her daughter, we're going to go for it. There are other things he said. These 2 things he said publicly, and other things he said in a more private session. But just one point, which I know we all know, we've all heard, but he said it with a lot of military details, that during the Gulf War, why am I sharing all this? This was not planned, but I guess we're talking about miracles, and we're talking about ourselves partnering with the miracles, which the first story with that Megiddo female soldier really brought out, with the separating of the challah and buying the letter in the Sefer Torah and keeping the Shabbos, and just sort of continuing on that vein of celebrating and recognizing God's enormous miracles that are created by what we've been doing around since October 7th and what we continue to do. We are God's partners. We are creating miracles. So this man said, the Gulf War was a war of miracles, and the whole world recognized the miracles. And we got 39 scuds, and not one person died from the scuds, and come to a place and apartment buildings are demolished, and somehow everyone survived almost without a scratch, again and again and again. 39 scuds, 39 times. So it was a war of miracles. He said what we've gone through since October 7th has blown away the miracles of the Gulf War completely. We haven't had 39 missiles. We've had hundreds and hundreds of missiles shot at us. Iran that night when I was actually there, right before Passover, that Saturday night, shot hundreds of missiles at us. Now, in the fall, I don't remember the date, Iran again shot hundreds and hundreds of missiles at us. And there's been so many times, so many events, we hear it and remember it, and then we forget it because another miracle happens and something else happens, and then we hear it and we remember it and we forget because something else happens. But he said, if you look at the miracles of this past year, tremendous pain, tremendous tragedy, horrific loss of life, but if you look at the miracles, it blows away any other thing the Jewish people have ever experienced. And again, as I'm sure we've heard many, many, many times, but they keep finding more and more evidence of what Hezbollah was planning on doing, how they were planning on invading to such a degree, and with so much ammunition and so much resources. They said it would have made October 7th look, so to speak, like a picnic in the park compared to what they were going to do. And God didn't let it happen at all. At all. So we're only beginning Kislev. It's the first day. It's the month of miracles. We've experienced craziest year. Horrors. Anti-Semitism. Stuff we never expected to feel. I mean, maybe you, because you grew up in Russia. I grew up in America. I would never have believed what happened this year in America. Never. Never. And more is coming out. And at the same time, the flowing of miracles also, like we've never experienced before. So I can't wait. We're going to see this Kislev. And please remember, like we said, we saw what happened in 1977 with the Rebbe, with this soldier, and with ourselves in our lives. We partner with God to make the miracles. Miracles are created by God. We're God's partner. And just like with that soldier, her mother's separation of the challah, her uncle's keeping the Sabbath, her friend buying that letter in the Sefer Torah, and then her own bravery and courage and presence to grab that cell phone and send that location. And then the IDF, of course, being able to rescue her from there. God's miracles. But we partner with God to make those miracles. So we should just see an unbelievable Kislev. The month is starting today. Today was the first day. We spent today, didn't get to do the other part of what I thought we might do today, but we spent today focusing on thanking God for the miracles of 1977, and we'd like to thank God for the miracles happening right now in 2024. It's a whole month ahead, and we want to see a lot of miracles, and we want to be his partners to make them happen.